continuously go on.
It will be on which website?
On hello.
Ah, there you are. Hello.
On ICI.
All right, let's go.
Independent Curators International. They have been very interested in the project also as an independent curatorial solution or like kind of answer to the times. So they asked us especially to devise an interview series with the artists to learn your positions. So.
Yes, I mean, it's a good moment to, again, to congratulate both of you. Really, that was like an amazing, amazing project. And it was really hitting the point, right? And was at the right time, right moment.
It was at the right moment, yes. It was at the right moment. It just like listening to our intuition, like, and the heart, and like kind of to do it at this point. And I think everybody heard the same or felt the same intuition at the same time. This was really still something really beautiful, even after weeks after, you know, that still gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. And thank you also for really an amazing
piece. It was very, very touching.
You're so welcome. I mean, it came out of your call, to be honest.
So Ulf, why don't you actually tell us a bit about the work you did on Max Lingner Straße, so a street your studio is on, and which actually the person after which the street is named gave a reason to the work. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so like I'm actually, so it's a really beautiful coincidence that my studio is in Max Lingner Straße, and Max Lingner was a painter of a very famous painter, in fact, of GDR period, and also professor for painting in Weissensee, where I actually teach as well. So that was like when I got the chance to take this apartment, it's a very small apartment, as a studio. I was totally in, especially for like the name, of course, right? So this link is beautiful, and it's still making up my mind. So your project initiated also like a broader and longer conversation with Max Lingner. So maybe I'll talk about that later. So and he was, I wrote some lines, so I'm able to improvise while reading, and also like giving you the information I think is important, because he was kind of an interesting guy. He was a graphic artist and painter who migrated to France in the 30s. But before he took part, so a very political artist, he took part in the Sailor Rebellion and was also a soldier in the First World War, World War #1. And in France, he joined Communist Union of Artists and became well known for his press drawings and graphics, which he documented the struggle of working class, and got arrested for it, was sent to an internment camp, and later joined the anti-fascist resistance and lived under false name. And then after liberation of Hitler Germany, he went back to Germany, to this very young, newly founded GDR, and became professor at the Weissensee Kunsthochschule. And it's also interesting to know that the Weissensee Kunsthochschule is having a very strong like foundation, which is like, we built up an art school based on anti-fascism, and as like the art school in Berlin of the young and upcoming GDR. I find that always very inspiring, because wherever I am, I can't feel or like see it when I like speak with colleagues. It's such a political like impact this school is actually coming with. That's very, very inspiring. I'll talk about that also later. And then in Weissensee, he became also professor for painting Malerei des Zeitgeschehens, which is like, if you translate it directly, painting of contemporarity, which of course sounds very cool. Sorry, that's my dog. And became then later well known as one of the bigger GDR artists, who later created this huge mural Aufbau der Republik, or building the new republic, which still exists today. at the wall of the Detlef Rohwedder House, which is now the Bundesfinanzministerium, the Federal Ministry of Finance. So, and to make a very long and very interesting and also inspiring and complex story very short, he was officially criticized as an artist of the GDR and got hit in this dispute over formalism, which was in fact, like I would say, it killed his reputation as an artist also. And that's a very complex and also very German and very national debate, and was actually really like, it went against him as an artist. And this whole thing of art as an expression of representation versus form, it's a question that is like still going on today, we could say, but and this is maybe also very interesting, like in the context of political art. And my approach and like contribution to your exhibition was to take his anti-fascist perspective and attitude kind of very seriously, and in with this Aufbau der Republik II, I took a section of his painting, and you have to know that this painting was actually created to let the GDR like represent itself as like a young and upcoming worker and peasant party state. And I took a part of that painting, just a very tiny one, that was actually like, that shows like the leg work, like the work of the feet and the movement, and it shows what actually has to be done every day, and it shows the section of the extremities which we work, and which like these parts of the body that are not so strongly connected with identity attributes like the face. And I also expand this section with additions in which I change skin color and also vary like gender related attributions, and in order to, yes, like to open up something, in fact, or in order to achieve a loosening in this a very strict and rigid structure of this whole painting. Maybe I should show it to you.
Yes.
And then I printed on a banner, you know, and that's a very long story, but I printed on a banner and hang it from the balcony as a greeting to the street, and also like greeting to New Republic, of course, like, yeah, which is for me still a very inspiring fantasy. I have the option of showing you something with like sharing the screen.
It would be great if you can. Yes, of course. Because we will have many audience for this conversation who wouldn't know this particular history and him. So it would be really nice to see the image that you're inspired from.
I think now you should see it, right?
Yes, yes.
It's interesting because, you know, so that's the part. That's the part the excerpt I took for my contribution to your exhibition. But see how big that painting is.
Wow!
It's a huge one.
Huge.
And these are small plates of ceramic, and of course colored. And it's on the first sight, of course, it's very beautifully done, but it's also very white. I would say it's so white. And look at all these women, how they look. So there is a very strong impact in the painting, and a very strong political notion. But I had this direct like need of changing something. Yeah, that's more or less the thing, right? So, and then it was like the banner became huge, but I took the size of the balcony because I took your invitation kind of serious and wanted to really add it to the balcony of my studio.
No, it functioned. I think it really functioned beautifully. It also reminded me the way you focus on the feet. You know, this is also it reminded me of like a kind of a documentary work that I seen in Brazil about like the resistances, current resistances, that how police actually try to identify people like from their feet, because everything is masked. And so like, and also the people who are like kind of part of the right, they are very aware, and they try to actually shift so that they cannot be identified like from the feet. So that's that it really reminded me that when I first saw, I wanted to say, yeah.
I read something very similar from the Hong Kong protests,
Yeah.
where like people also try to hide their sneakers and cover them up, and yes, like the cameras now are, and with all those algorithm, they are able to, like, of course, understand the movement, the individual movement also from bodies.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And also, I mean, thanks to the phones that we are carrying, of course, like the movements are much more identifiable through the machinery that we carry on our bodies willingly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking also that, you know, you, like Max Lingner, you are also an artist. You are also a professor at the same art school. You live in the same district. However, you were born in West Germany, and you arrived to this area of Berlin, Prenzlauer Berg, in the 90s, right? And you said somewhere, or maybe you wrote this to us, that engaging with his work is also for you a way of engaging with the society to which you never belonged.
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit more about this? So in which sense you didn't belong, and in which sense do you engage with them more? Or
so in fact so I'm not a child of the GDR, right? So I'm coming from the west part of Germany, but my family history is deeply rooted in and also in a very violent way in the history of the GDR. Come, up. She doesn't want. And when I started to study art, my first 2 years were at an art academy in Halle an der Saale, which is so much GDR related, and this whole academy is full of GDR related history. And like I started studying there my first 2 years, and was mainly interested in just living in Halle an der Saale, just being there, and also trying to read and to understand the public space. Hey, come here. And also trying to work with all these monuments in Halle in public space. But maybe another story to answer your question is that when I started to teach in Weissensee, I realized, as I said before, that it's a place that has taught art forms that in a very special way connect like this formal and realism debate, and is always in combination with like questioning public space and the discussion about the use or the utility of art, which is a for me very inspiring question of understanding artistic production from the socialist point of view, or from the history of GDR. And when I started to teach in Weissensee, I was invited to give an inaugural lecture, that's how you say, eine Antrittsvorlesung at the Weissensee School, so in front of the entire university, and immediately thought of another mural hanging in the school in a room where all those political committee work and the whole administration, the political debates are actually taking place. And this is by Arno Mohr, this whole mural, and it's called Wendepunkt, which is like turning point, and this negotiates the upheaval of property relations in the GDR, and it's a super beautiful painting. I have a picture, I'm showing it to you right now. And I decided to reproduce the mural digitally and to project it in one-to-one in my lecture. So I held my speech quasi inside the mural. And as an extension, every single part of my lecture in which I talked about my approach to artistic work, to teaching, referred to one of these depicted figures. So I was always connected with the question of what art does in the picture and my relation to it. So, and I took this whole thing like a family therapy, asking about the relationship of all the individual figures to each other. So, and of course, it became more a lecture performance than an inaugural lecture, right? And the picture is, I'm showing it to you. Wait.
Okay, please, yeah, sure.
I mean, that would be also interesting as a work at some point to have this lecture performance, or like it would be really fantastic to have it also in connection with the piece that you started now.
Maybe I should. Of course, I was capturing it with video. Maybe I should do an edit. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Look, this is such a fantastic and beautiful painting. Look, the family. Sorry. I'm doing it again. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So you have on the left side, you have, of course, this whole class struggle and like the uprising against like the rich and the upper classes. And on the right side, you have the building of the building of the new republic. And you have all these individuals, the peasant, like there's the artist himself. So he wrote himself, he painted himself into the painting. I was asking, why is the painting white and what's the role of art within this whole thing? But I was actually, so that's not irony, I was deeply interested in this figure because she looks very, very interesting with the closed eyes. And I was asking myself about like this whole irrational part in this formal realism debate in the GDR. So I was asking, so what's she dreaming about? So what's also her role? And I was asking a lot about the role of this family, because you have, of course, Karl Marx, and then you have this interesting person, which could be like a person of color, and the woman with the child. So of course, it's a very typical like role model. But I was very interested within my lecture. I was interested in the question. So what's this kind of family about? Like, you have like what's his role in the setting also? And I was asking, what's with this guy? So what's happening? So why is he so depressed, or what's he thinking and reflecting on? And for me, it's a very inspiring painting. And please keep in mind, so the whole Akademischer Senat and the Fachgebietssprecherinnensitzung, so all of these political discussions and debates in school are happening in front of that very painting. For me, you know, it was like, of course I have to work on that. Of course, I put myself into the painting, and I show a lot of I was actually screening several of my works, trying to connect them to all of these figures. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So interesting.
Yeah, beautiful.
But,
I mean, maybe the figure of the guy maybe is one of the you know, maybe it's one of the more like kind of African states who were kind of feeling close to Marxist ideas at that point, because there was also a connection. I mean, they were coming from Cuba also, I think.
Absolutely.
You know, I think there's a connection there that he's making. There's this kind of internationalist position that he's taking. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's so interesting also to ask actually the history of Weissensee, go into the archives and look for like students of color which actually are there, but as of course got minorized, and to like, I'm trying to relate to this very, very concrete history, to ask questions of like, how do we study, and what is like, can we like deal and negotiate all of these mechanisms of in and exclusion also in the like art academy as it is today, right? So this is a very strong part of my work there.
And actually, maybe it's a good moment to ask you about what you introduced in the school, in the academy, namely foundation class. What is foundation class, and yeah, how do you work with it?
Yeah, foundation class in Weissensee is a program that like runs as, it works as a legal tool. That's how we call it, actually, a legal tool. It's a, I mean, foundation class is a one-year program that helps and supports students who actually want to study, who had to flee from their home countries, who want to study art. And of course, I have to, it's kind of dangerous, but I'm able to let you understand what we're actually really doing when I tell you that a lot of people call the students we are working with refugees, and we call them artists wanting to study, facing multiple ways of discrimination and racism. Okay, so you know, do you see the difference? And for me, it's a very important difference. And we take it as a legal tool because they come with the status of being like refugee. They come with the status, and while running through this whole program and then hopefully getting accepted in the art academy, they become art students and or studying artists, which I prefer, studying artists. So the status changed from refugee, which is more or less nothing in Germany, and it goes into academy student, and that's a lot. So that's why we call it a legal tool, and it's a one-year program with which we support them in their application process. And it's first of all, it's a social space. First and of all, it's a social space, which means that we work a lot. We really try to relate to each other. We all invest a lot. And we offer all of the resources Weissensee has actually to offer. And we also try to share as many tricks as possible, you know, to create a successful portfolio. And we let students get together with artists and curators to, yes, like to improve their portfolio and to like actually to work together, to collaborate in workshops. And it's a one-year program. After this 1 year, they build their portfolios, and then they go to apply for becoming an art student or like studying artist. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's it. More or less, it's a kind of challenging program because we use it. This is like it's one layer is what I said now. The second one is why it's really challenging is it's because I call it also a social machinery, something like that. It's a bit blurry, but it's a social machinery which actually works by itself, and it's performing within the academy program, because like slowly, year by year, we change the art academy from the inside by questioning who's getting accepted and who not, and why, and what are the mechanisms of in and exclusion, and why is art academy still very, very Eurocentric, and what is to be taught at the art academy, what kind of art histories, which is kind of maybe like, hopefully this happens in many other art academies as well. In Weissensee, it's a huge debate, I tell you, and what is so interesting and inspiring to see that like students from foundation class, once they got accepted, and of course they they apply everywhere, so UDK as well, and also in other cities. But I see what happens when students from foundation class get accepted in Weissensee. It's beautiful because they just perform change. Sorry, I don't want to make them to change makers, but actually that's what they do, because they come with really beautiful questions just by being there. And it's a debate, of course. And I'm super happy and feel very, very privileged to be part of that. And just to let you know, I'm not teaching. I'm just like in the background coordinating and also not leading the program. I was initiating the program, but for me it was very important to set up like a huge team. And it is a huge and very diverse, still changing, very flexible team. And I'm not like the white guy in front of everyone else, like telling people what they should do. I'm just like offering resources and working in the background, and I'm defending the program in political debates,
academic committees, and like kind of
committees,
pushing it so that it can get more funding and stuff
exactly,
like that. Yeah,
exactly.
May I ask also, like, sorry, like, because I'm very curious. I think Foundation Class is a very important initiative in Germany in general, also about
Thank
like
you.
the inclusion of the migrant community in the arts and culture, because this is always a big question that I have. While the migrant communities, they are seen as valuable workforce, they are never like seen as valuable consumers of arts and culture and producers as well. So may I ask, like, what kind of change have you experienced, like in the level of discussion? And also, I would be curious your also observations in Berlin, because Berlin is also shifting a lot in the recent years in terms of like the different inclusivities of the arts community.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very it's a good question, and I think I don't know if I'm the one who's able to answer this question, but what I notice in the school context, I notice that like the discourse about what is mainstream is shifting. The discourse about what kind of history, cultural backgrounds, and also like therefore symbolic values. So what is a symbolic value when it comes to art production? So this is shifting by like new students, and it's shifting by students coming with completely different backgrounds than the professors, and then so of course this is creating a lot. And yes, like positively spoken, I could say also, yes, some of the professors really try to do their homework also, or some of my colleagues really try to change like their offer, and they try to understand that racism can actually happen within a department, you know. And I'm very, very critical about these kind of questions, because I still see so much work. And I see like a huge wall I'm actually running against, which is the so-called autonomy of the arts. Autonomy of teaching means that like lecturers, professors, teachers, they are still allowed to do whatever, and they allow themselves by like relating to this autonomy, which of course is a very important value, but is also used as like for arbitrary, right? And this is like, it's so hard to talk about that without like hurting each other. And I think I want to be more critical than I would be positive about what's actually happening. But of course there is a change, and I'm happy to be also part of that change. And like Berlin, like talking about Berlin, art world Berlin, of course Berlin is changing so much, of course. And but you know, I really try to distinguish between like this happy multi-culti attitude, which is a very neoliberal term, and which you find everywhere, and you can make a lot of money, and you can also improve your identity. You can like, you can improve your you can buy a ticket with this multi-culti thing in the art world with it. Of course, many people use it, while in the same time it's not so common that like that when there is a position or there is the option for an exhibition, that a diverse community is in the mind of the ones who are like in power, right? Do you understand what I try to say? It's very generally what I'm saying and not so focused. But I just want to say that, of course, this mainstream-ish multi-culti perspective has actually really come to Berlin a lot. And so many so great people came to Berlin. But when we talk about institutions, when we talk about resources, I'm still critical, and I don't think that this is a very, very open-minded city when it comes to resources, right?
Yeah, I agree. So there is a discrepancy in like kind of the touristic discourse, let's say, like a kind of a market discourse, and the actual.
It's also touristic, yes.
Yeah, it's a touristic discourse also. Yeah,
of course, it comes by also a lot of art tourists, no? I mean, there are so many, they come to Berlin just using the city as a stage for whatever, leaving it after a few years, and do not engage in politics at all. So when it comes to funding for artists, yeah, sometimes I would like to have more attention of the people about like the tools we could in Berlin and we could use for like demanding better funding, better support for studio, and all of these questions which are actually coming up now again in the context of Corona, right? So and I'm very happy that these questions are like on stage. I think they're a bit too late, to be honest.
Yeah, it's always comes a little bit late, like there's always this kind of delay, but then again we are also happy that it is taking place at the end of the day. I hope it develops further also. Yeah.
So if you want to publish this on the ICP page, maybe what I said now is not so interesting, but you will see. It's very general.
Yeah, we can edit this. But I was actually wondering also about it's because it seems like you're spending a lot of your life in former East Berlin, right? Because you live in Prenzlauer Berg and you work in Weissensee, it's also East Berlin. And since you have been here for such a long time, since the 90s, and we are rather part of Övül and me, we represent on one hand maybe international art world, but on the other hand we also represent two biggest working class minorities of Germany. So we are like in between. Yeah. But we were also wondering, we would like to hear from you about actually an idea of being a neighbor and how it has evolved since the 90s when you had your first neighbors in Prenzlauer Berg till today, knowing that obviously actually in the early 2000s, the city being so bankrupt started to sell so much apartments to the developers and big companies and corporations. And you also did another project about this and taking profit. And this led to quite rapid gentrification also of Prenzlauer Berg. So is there something you can share with us about like the being a neighbor idea that has evolved since the 90s till today in Prenzlauer Berg, but maybe in Berlin in general?
So this has changed so much, really so much. In the 90s, Svenja and me, we lived in a house in Danziger Straße and felt very, very comfortable just because of like having all these really great neighbors and some of them like living in this very house for decades. And for us, it wasn't so easy to really get into this kind of community, but it was all about creating trust on a very, very decisive and special question, which was like, who's allowed to design the garden and the yard? And once the neighbors realized that we were really interested in just like doing something and maybe also helping, and or cleaning up or whatever, but like producing and doing something in the yard or in the garden, once they actually got it, that we were trying to engage in their also like place, we created a beautiful neighborhood. And it was a very romantic time for many reasons. But the romantic notion came really out of that shared neighborhood, to be honest. And I think it's so easy. It's so easy, and it's exactly what we are missing now. And maybe that's it's so easy what I'm saying, but I think it's very important because in the house we live now, not through the corona, it's interesting that people really start to talk to each other in a different way. And also like, yeah, we should have a barbecue maybe one day. And it's, yeah, really hope that you're okay. Can we support each other? This comes up now, which is totally, I mean, the house we are living in is totally privatized, which I'm suffering a lot from that because of this very anonymity, which in fact was not in the house I'm talking about before, like the house where Svenja and me used to live in the 90s. This was a totally unrenovated, almost ruin-ish house in the Danziger Straße, but the community was strong. And yeah, so how to share resources, how to support each other, how to own like the houses we're actually living in. You know, I mean, I think I'm not the only one who's talking about that, and there are so strong communities and debates and discussions and demonstrations and initiatives in Berlin asking these kind of questions, coming up with this debate, producing this debate. I think it's very relevant. It's very, very relevant. And yes, of course, I mean, Prenzlauer Berg has changed so much that it's almost dry and dead. And it's in some parts, it becomes interesting again, you know, because it's like without any kind of culture. It's interesting because it's almost like a ghetto. So I'm waiting for another layer of darkness coming into it or something like that. But as an artist in that very time, I was very interested in those parts of Prenzlauer Berg which you don't know, or like, I mean, not you personally, but like which are not fancy, not the latte macchiato parts of Prenzlauer Berg. I was hanging out a lot in the north part of Prenzlauer Berg, everything what is north from Danziger Straße, and is still is a workers-related district and kind of poor community also. And I was always very interested in these parts because I felt that this is like much more like it's telling so much about history also, but also about the reality of Berlin. And I did several projects as an artist in these neighborhoods, and very intense projects, and spent a lot of time, and was also giving a lot from myself in these kind of projects.
Yes, because also before, I mean, the legends, or like the urban legends with which we came to Berlin, was all about, you know, the squat houses, underground actions, takeovers, one-night performances, exhibitions.
Yes.
Of course, by the time we arrived, there was nothing left of it. But
it was done.
Yeah, it was done. But we sort of grew, you know, with or like kind of stayed, or like kind of still felt the connection of the city to that sort of history, which I'm sure you also participated very actively in the
Yes, I mean, I'm one of the older guys now. So I had the privilege to be like in the west part in Kreuzberg in the late 80s before the wall came down. So I was part of squatting scene and also very politicized scene in the end of 80s in Kreuzberg. And yeah, it's almost like a dream back, like thinking about back then. So it's so different because it was a small village against the rest of Berlin, So there was a very strong opposition. And I find it very interesting to also, if we want to understand what was happening through the falling down of the wall, through the like 89, it was exactly that the opposition wasn't there anymore. And also like the era of Cold War has ended. So it wasn't so easy to distinguish between my side and their west and east. So this whole interaction became very important or vivid. And in the 80s in Kreuzberg, it was actually the identity of everyone was like, yes, of course, we are Kreuzberger and we are against the whole rest. And like the 1st of May, 87, you know, this is still a legend and was totally coming out. This whole political identification was so strong and came absolutely out of this like, we are the village, you know, against the rest. Yes, and this whole I think a lot of that moved to the east. But in these days, I wasn't in Berlin. I was moving to somewhere else and came back later. And then when I came to Prenzlauer Berg, the big squats, also in Friedrichshain, like Riga Straße, that was already almost over, more or less. And this whole era of gentrification has started. Yeah.
Which you're part
and changed everything. Like yes, it's almost impossible to talk about that.
Mm.
Yeah.
But so maybe looking now a little bit towards the future also.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, one thing we would
that's
like.
Important.
No, it's absolutely fun. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's so important.
Very important for us to hear. You know,
it's so important,
and making these connections, because as you were just saying, please, Joanna, don't forget what you were about to say. Just wanted to point out that, like you were saying, the people come out to Berlin and they stay only for a year and or like a couple of years, and they never get connected actually to the histories of the city and like to the historical subjectivities, political subjectivities developed in this city, and which is like basically isolates everyone, you know, in their cubicles in a way, like, and that kind of separates, which I hope in a way with this period also we would start to take also a position that build these bridges between actually the political communities who are arriving to Berlin, who cannot survive in their countries and who are arriving because of war and because of conflict, and between like these histories that were there very strong and the histories that are coming. So because there are strong bridges between them, and I think we have a lot of responsibility in the art scene to be, you know, to make them more visible, or like kind of to make them more appear in the public discussion.
Wow, that's beautiful what you're saying. Absolutely, the culture of coming. Yes.
And actually also drawing, thank you, Övül, for this comment, because you know, why actually Die Balkone gave us some hope was precisely the feeling that we actually also belong here. And we can do something about the place that, you know, has been our home now for quite a while, and we can find a way of belonging in a kind of transnational manner. And if we respect and zoom in the local history, we might find all these amazing stories, you know, of artists who have been even here since the 80s in the squatting scene of East Berlin, you know, and how they actually paved the way for many of us to work here. And then also to talk to the people like you who have arrived in the 90s and also very much are now, as you say, working with the society we're not part of, but you belonged. And now how do we become part of this society as internationals? It's true, we should actually maybe press the city of Berlin of saying, please recognize who you are now. You are not a community of only Germans, right? It's an international community. And how can we give back, and how can we be part, take an active role in where we are, while, of course, the private developers are gentrifying even more, right? So it's also a moment of us to, you know, and the Balkone was, of course, an art initiative of building a community in isolation during Corona, but the reason why we continue is that we feel it's also more than that, right? And we want somehow to connect the neighborhood and to the ideas of being an artist, but also neighbors, and to revive this idea in some sense, you know.
Wow, that's so important what you're saying. It's so important, and I think the smart part of one of the smart parts, because there are many of Die Balkone, is that it's actually happening in Prenzlauer Berg, because, you know, in the whole city of Berlin, everyone is like saying Prenzlauer Berg is dead, it's over, it's not interesting anymore, and it's even how do you say, so it's more almost shameful to live there, right?
Yes,
like you cannot.
So where do you live?
I live in Prenzlauer.
You know,
Yeah, but look how many of us live here. Look at
Exactly.
Here.
It was so interesting to see who else is there, really. No, but also like coming from this international perspective, which is so important for Berlin, because you know when Berlin is like focusing on Berlin, it becomes nationalistic, or it's the danger of creating a German nationalistic discourse. Fuck it, we don't need it anymore. It's done, it's over. Of course, we need internationality, of course. And it's great from that perspective, questioning Prenzlauer Berg, really.
Mm. And also, actually, one more thing, you know, great to think of is that it was also a district where the opposition against GDR was formed.
Absolutely.
You know, and actually people who went to destroy the wall, because it only came to my mind clearly recently. Of course, it was not obviously not the West Germans who destroyed the wall. It was the East Germans who said, it's enough, right? And then this was a critical mass.
Of course.
Yes, I mean, I know. I mean, of course, it's obvious, but somehow you think, yeah, it came from somewhere, and those people were living here and gathering in the churches. And so, of course, they were kind of also very much rethinking the idea of what is public, what is private, like a balcony, right? Where do you produce the political discourse? Where is the threshold between those spheres? How do you do it if you cannot do it really in the open?
And how do you decide to own it also? How do you decide to own where you live, like claim it back, like claim the space back? In a way, also, this is a very good connection for us, like as also as part of the gesture, like to claim back like the places, to claim back the imagination, because especially the point also where the initiative took place was like the moment where most of us felt really cornered by this discourse, sovereign discourse, asking us to be, you know, voiceless bodies with credit cards, constantly shopping and connecting only over Zoom and or like only on digital and like doing nothing else, and really very particular way of like kind of surveillance and control. And a lot of people felt, okay, like what can we do against it, or can we really like kind of break it, because at the same time there's so much concern also for our health, which is that kind of very true. So this is again then comes back like the moment of claiming, of course in a transformed way, but I think it's still like is a very important that connection to that history as well from my side.
Yeah, but of course we have to do it exactly together. So we have to do it with the people who have been here and grew up and got socialized and politicized here for different reasons, and with people like you who do an amazing structural work, you know, political work for art, and people like us, you know, that still struggle with German. But that are
no, you don't have to learn German.
Still struggling with our German, now.
You don't have to learn it.
We learning, of course. It's, you know, we learning.
No, but it was great that you also did it, like both of you, like you did it as a collaboration, this whole project. It's really, really great.
Yes, it's really like I think it is also, people are so not used to have Berliner artists like, or like curators all together producing something for their city without an official structure above them, like, you know, like a museum or a biennial, or, you know, or a private collection or whatsoever, is something that's kind of very surprising, because people are so, in a way, we also realized in the meantime that people are so used to live here by contributing to the other discourses that they are engaged with in other places, but so such a small amount of it actually kind of becomes part of like the discourse of the city, or like discourse that can be produced and that can be enriched here.
So you made all of the invited artists, you made them getting off from their like work control stations in front of their screens and starting to work where they actually are, where their bodies are, and not like oversea or wherever. Yeah, it was great.
But it's also such a privilege that we live in the city, but also in the district, where you have so many great minds, next to each other. So why not to use it? Because all of us keep complaining that we don't have enough job in Berlin, we don't work enough. I mean, you are a professor here, it's different for you. But many, people like always traveling somewhere hectically, and maybe actually Corona, it's a moment to rethink those things. And maybe that was my actually question for the end of our conversation. So, many of us do this kind of homework of Bruno Latour question, what to come back to, what not. And so we also would like to ask you that question, but maybe having in mind the idea of publicness and public art, with which you also work a lot, very much. So
it's one of the main interests in my productions is asking what is public and what is common, and are we able to, what is the space between you and me and the space between everyone else? How do we negotiate it? And it's kind of cynical to say that I would be happy about what's happening now, because it's so hardcore to see like how more privileged persons are like able to sit around and like whatever post film lists, while care workers have to work for nothing, or while others got like racial profiled on street, or like, what I'm talking about, living in camps. So it's a very, very hard situation, and harsh, also very harsh situation. But I wouldn't go like asking for how to use the public space. I'm very happy that now everything is on a stage. Like doing a demonstration means that we have to start to like reflect on our bodies. We have to create this distance. We have to find ways of like performing, behaving on street. I find it a very interesting situation. And I think this is also creating many new ideas and concepts, and they are already popping up. They are already there. New ways of also demonstrating and new forms of protest. And I find it very inspiring that there is now a very strong connection and relation between like the digital, a Zoom meeting, and then like the part outside on street. And live streaming a demonstration on a Zoom level is getting a completely new notion right now in these days. And I find that very interesting. So I'm not able to give you a direct answer in a Latour to your Bruno Latour question, but I have to say that I'm working in some structures where people really try to get back to normal, and try to copy the normal to translate it onto a digital level, and to create a digital version of what was being normal in the analog space. And I totally reject that. Totally. For me, normal is problem, really. And I don't want to get back to that. And I find it very interesting to see that we have to think about so many questions now. And I really hope that this continues. I really hope that this continues. Of course, I want us to have more opportunities for protest, and also for like reclaiming the street. But I think they will come. I'm pretty sure about that. And in this, I'm very optimistic, because there's a huge movement coming up. And what I'm really afraid of is the other part of the movement, which is like the Corona critical movement, and this whole crazy person out there. And I'm really, really afraid what's happening right now, I have to say.
Yeah, this the new level of like the gathering in Alexanderplatz yesterday. It looks,
it's so awful, really.
It's so awful and scary, Scary.
And this is also a very German thing, because there are a lot of people, they really claim for free speech and basic rights. And it's really cynical, because they never came up talking and demanding for basic rights when it came to like what happened in Hanau, mass murder, or NSU protest, or So for me, they are totally. I can't take them serious, but we have to take them serious because there are so many.
Yeah.
And they come with a very German drive, very focused. They really want to change something now, and they are infiltrated by Nazis. That's it.
Yeah. And then they also
Period.
like what also concerns me a lot is that they are also using very important symbols from fascist resistance, anti-fascist resistance, like the Weiße Rose, the white rose, and like
it's unbelievable what they do.
This is really like something. The level, it again kind of shows how much work also from our side that we need to do to reclaim the language, the languages of
the symbols.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they are completely being kind of infiltrated in this very weird, very ambivalent, and dangerous political positions.
And they come out of this, what used to be the normal before the Corona shutdown, they were already there, and now they are popping up. So why should we go back to normal? We have to fight against these drives, political drives, so much.
Definitely, I agree, yes.
No.
We have to offer our other drives.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is a very good point to maybe, I mean, there's still so much to ask like about also like your previous works, and also Deutsche Wohnen, and also Körbstrasse. These are really very important.
Oh, wow, yes.
Stories that we'd like to continue talking. But maybe like we can have a second session following after.
That would be nice.
And then we kind of more trace the connections, like the trajectories, and maybe we'll use this as an occasion to trace the connections between the works and histories that you are dealing with. But yeah, I think this is a very important point that we can maybe stop for a moment. What do you think, Joanna?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's it's super inspiring, and let's keep talking
super
in a new chapter.
I'm really like kind of I can continue talking for another hour easily. Yes.
Same with me.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for that conversation, and again for all of this work with Die Balkone. Are you going to translate it to another place now, Die Balkone?
It's open source. People translated it by themselves, and there are many versions all around the world. Also in Kreuzberg.
Also in Kreuzberg, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, there is now like kind of the rare window screenings that are organized by.
Nice, yeah, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, the Ali Demiral screenings.
Great.
But yeah, right now an initiative that was inspired also from the Balkone is taking place in Paris, but in a very different format.
Wow.
It's more like kind of the phantomly appearances in public space at the moment.
Wow.
But from our side, we're also talking about taking solid steps in the future, and how to formulate how to translate this rich experience that we gained to different channels in Berlin. We are talking about it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that there is no. It's so important to get back to like art in public space, artistic production in public space, and that's also a question. And sorry, that's also an answer to your Latour question. So I think it's it's so great that we have many more opportunities now to engage in public art in Berlin. Structures are missing. We have to work for them, and we have to fight for them also. But I think you did a really, really great and huge step in a really great direction.
Thank you for this generous work.
Yeah, thank you for your support.
Thank you.
It was only possible, with all we send the signal out in the world, and people picked up the signal.
Yeah, exactly. We just like see our role as like kind of the distributor of the signal. it is the collective magic that happened that made it so beautiful.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much for this really nice talk and conversation.
Thank
and
you.
really, like, I'm serious that we can take another round. Maybe we can even publish this in some place to kind of have a kind of a larger scale. That would be really interesting for me also to continue in this.
Nice. All right. Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity and all the sharing. Thank you, Joanna, for
thank you, Övül.
Thank you, both of you. Bye.
Much love.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Have a good Sunday evening. Bye.